What's the difference between a scoliosis and a kyphosis? I will explain. Kyphosis is actually normal, and so is lordosis, if you've heard that word banded around. Kyphosis means a forward bend in the spine. This is how it sits in us, and lordosis means a backward bend in the spine. We should have a forward bend in the middle back where your rib cage is, and a backward bend in the lower back, and a backward bend in the neck. A scoliosis, on the other hand, is this, and that's a left to right bend, and that is a lot more difficult to deal with. Quite often people get freaked out when they see they've got kyphosis or this, that, the other. You can have hyperkyphosis, which means it bends too much, but a normal kyphosis, having kyphosis in the middle back, is normal and essential. You don't want it to be flat because then it doesn't have any capacity for shock absorption. And the same thing in the neck and lower back. You should have a lordosis. We see people coming in, they say, oh, my GP said I had a lordosis. That's not a thing. Most people should have a lordosis. Do you have hyperlordosis? Do you have hypolordosis? Too much or too little of that curve? That's the important part. So don't get freaked out when you see it on a report that you have lordosis or you have kyphosis. That's normal. It's hyper or hypo that you should look for on your reports, and that's when you might need help. Now, with those, if you do have a hyper, you can, in a lot of cases, if there's no degenerative arthritis or any damage to the spine, you can actually reduce that hyperkyphosis, or you can increase that hypolordosis, so you get back to normal alignment in your neck, middle back or lower back. In the case of a scoliosis, these are much more complex. It's much more difficult to affect those. But if you do have scoliosis, if it's marginal, if it's like that, that's very, very marginal. I really wouldn't necessarily go as far as being freaked out having scoliosis. Scoliosis is quite a substantial change in the spinal alignment. If you've got that, you really should see someone. Osteopath, chiropractor would be the most logical choice, but in some cases where it's very, very severe, people end up having something called the Harrington rods, which is basically rods put in the spine, which, well, have a look about that on Google and you'll find more information, but it's not something we would be overly thrilled for anyone to voluntarily go for, as it's quite invasive surgery.